This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelica Salinska. I am your host, and today I'm joined by Dr. Valerie Daniel. Thank you, Valerie, very much for joining today.
You're welcome, Angelica. It's a pleasure being here.
So Valerie is an executive head teacher of 2 nursery schools, and today she's going to be discussing creative pedagogical practices to encourage agency, which is a really interesting topic. So I'll let you start, Valerie, with kind of explaining what do you mean by creative pedagogical practices?
I suppose the deeper concept of that, if we're going into it on a theoretical basis, is creative pedagogical practice is about generating and exploring ideas. It's about problem solving. It's about risk taking. It's about co-constructing learning and collaborating with teachers and with children, so that strong partnership and collaboration. It's about encouraging autonomy and agency. So within that concept, learning is not a static thing. It's something that is active, it's moving, it's revolving, and it's interactive, not just active, it's interactive. So it's a very exciting field, and something that I enjoy looking into, because there's not a day that you don't learn more when you work with creative pedagogies.
Mm-hmm. And I guess when you talk about creativity, there's endless possibilities, and there isn't anything that is very prescriptive. It's all, I guess, limited by your own creativity and imagination, probably.
In some ways, that is an element of it, but that comes this limitless possibility comes out of practice. It comes out of what I call osmosis within our environment. We live it, breathe it. It's there in everything that we do. It is not just a natural state that comes to people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, early years practice without creative pedagogies is quite prescriptive, because people are not as comfortable using their own judgments, testing theories. They're not as comfortable engineering situations to take children on their personal journeys. They're more focused on ticking the boxes and making sure every child has achieved this thing that has been set out for them to achieve within this term, kind of thing. So it is something that evolves as you become better, but the leadership of it needs to be strong. The practice of it needs to be strong. How it's informed and how staff have training and CPD and all those things around it has to be something that the setting and the school is committed to, so that it is something that is evident in practice. So not just a natural state, it's actually relearning in some ways and unlearning some of the things that we have been taught. A lot of us can look back in our practice in horror and go, oh my God, I can't believe I used to do that.
Yeah.
Now that we know a lot more about how children learn, we know a lot more about the effectiveness and the importance of adult interaction and how children respond and how adults do have agency, which allows children to have their own agency. So it is a very interesting process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that it's not just part of day-to-day practice and changing something in the classroom, in the environment. It is actually about the values of the setting, the ethos, and the whole setting approach.
And it's building a curriculum. It's literally building it. Everybody involved children involved, parents involved, staff involved. It's understanding the role that we play in how children learn, and that it's not, as I'm saying, it's not a static thing. It is something that moves. It's understanding and knowing the children you're working with, and understanding that that particular day in that particular time may not be the best time to be attempting to do, certain kinds of activities with children because of their particular circumstances, who they are, what they are. So it is a lot more personal than it is general. And it means that, people look at that and go, how can you possibly have, if you have 20 children in your group, or 13 children in your group, how can you possibly have that personal relationship with each of them? But I guarantee you that practice becomes it. You see things in the moment, you understand it in the moment, and you're able to respond and act on it in the moment. And it isn't so much about whether you've got it right. It's about the dedication to be a part of that journey and to make sure that children are happy, they are comfortable, to make sure you're happy and you're comfortable and you have what you need as a practitioner to make a difference in children's lives. So it's not come in, put a couple of activities on the table and children are playing and they're happy. Yes, that is very, very good. But what are they learning? Is it Groundhog Day? Are they doing the same thing every day and they think it's a lovely place because they get to come and play with their friends? Or are they actually learning something? And is it as a result of practitioners being very clear on pedagogy? Is it as a result of practitioners having agency in their practice so that they are clear on what their practice is, they're clear on the outcomes they're expecting, they're clear on how they are meeting the needs of the children in the class that they have. They have got sessions that they are very, very clear that some children need this, other children need that, and how they make those things work. The day is structured so that there is free flow and other things can be addressed during that time. And, post-COVID, we're having to kind of open up those practices in a different way. It used to be very different pre-COVID, but post-COVID, you kind of see the value in it not being as free as it was. So there are a little bit more limitations on it, but the concept behind it is the freedom to address, elements of our practice in a far more inclusive way with all the children in our group. So, yeah.
I guess the importance there is knowing every individual child, really getting to know them, but really knowing the community that you're in. So like you mentioned, families and parents as well. So it's not just about the educators getting on board together with their kind of curriculum and ethos. It's also involving the families and understanding the needs of the whole community.
Because we see our school as a learning community. So it's a community that parents are involved in, teachers are involved in. Our BSS, if we have a cook on site, everybody is part of that community. It's not a community where this is your job, you stay over there, because without every single person in that school making it work, being cogs in that wheel, it doesn't work. So everybody has a role. We call our chef. Our chef is very much a part of the learning and how, children eat. And it's all, we have dinner ladies whose responsibilities are around oral health for children and things like that. So it's not just this set roles for people that, that don't include anything more than I'm the dinner lady, I serve the food and I sweep up afterwards.
Yeah.
No, you are actively involved in knowing these children and making sure that they have what they need as well. So, yeah.
So I guess the children feel part of that community and almost like a bit of a family bubble, whoever they interact with, and everybody's consistent with that.
And it is also helping parents as well, and parents helping us, because we see parents as the children's first educators. So we perceive our parents as co-educators with us. When we talk about co-constructing learning, that includes our parents, it includes working with the children. So there is that strong attachment triangle that works with that dynamic. Co-construction is extremely important in with creative pedagogies. But the thing about creative pedagogies is that it has this strong theoretical base. You need to understand child development, and working with our staff, the leadership of that is very important, because sometimes we take learning in and it sits there. You kind of know it. Again, it's not just the knowledge, it's how that knowledge is applied, and that you recognize when you can pull on this source of knowledge when you need it, so it's applicable at the time when it's needed. So you have to have the strong theoretical and knowledge base. You have to have the practice basis, but then you also have to have the critical thinking basis. And that comes with your agency and autonomy. And that's the same field that works for children. Children, we're giving them knowledge in practice. So we're creating, when we're saying to children, look at this tangle of, what is it, ropes or whatever. I need to get this straight. What can I do? And they're figuring out how to untangle knots, and they're thinking about it constructively. That for them creates knowledge that they can apply in other circumstances. So if learning only happens within our classroom, we're missing a trick. If children can come out of the classroom and see something at home and go, oh, I know what I can do with this. I know because I learned this in school. That means they're applying knowledge, and not just within, they're applying it in different circumstances. And that's really what critical thinking is. That's how we support. We support each other to come, from this place of knowing, this place of agency. And it is really important in our practice, and it's important for us to nurture and encourage that in the children that we have in our care. That's a strong belief anyway.
So a lot of the adults that are working with children would be actively modelling lifelong learning then. Because they're really co-constructors in that. So they're always, showing the children that they are learners and they don't know absolutely everything just because they are an adult, and we can find out together.
Which is why in our school we have the concept of explorers, researchers, and inventors. So we perceive our youngest children as explorers. And this is in a physical sense. We perceive our rising threes as researchers, and we perceive and of course, researchers still need the concept of exploring. So it's an added concept, not one that we lose. That inventors still need to explore and research to become inventors. So we see that as age, an age concept. But we've also looked at that concept as one that happens on a daily basis in the lives of all of us and all our children. We look at something, we kind of go, what's that? we explore it. So it becomes experiential. It becomes something that we're looking at. And then when we explore it, we kind of go, well, this is interesting. Why did that do that? And we start making, so that means learning is active. It's not static. So we don't just produce paints for children. We allow them to mix paints. We allow them to go, oh, that's interesting. So this and this makes that. You know, it's that whole thing. And then we start looking at how we can apply that knowledge into making our own stuff, into inventing things. So, you know, when children are working with found materials and they're junk modeling or whatever, it's how they apply the knowledge of joining things, how they are allowed to experiment with things. So it's not just giving them what they need, it's giving them a choice of options. So they can explore those options for what works the best for what they're doing. And that means that we have to let go a little bit. We don't get to control that learning as strongly. And it means that we have to go against some of the ways we think, because a lot of us don't like mess and we don't like... Some of those things literally limit agency in children. It limits your own agency and it limits the agency in children, because we're more hung up on keeping everything neat. Because some of us, we don't want the big job before we go home at the end of the day or whatever, instead of having children being actively involved in that learning community. And that's the difference. If children are actively involved, it's everybody, it's home away from home in some ways. So it's it is an interesting process, and one that I couldn't work in any other way now. I would find it very difficult if somebody suddenly started saying, well, I am not happy about these creative pedagogies. I think it's airy-fairy. And that's what a lot of people who are not connected to education, and when they hear the word creative, they assume it is lacking rigor. But it is not lacking rigor. It is actually an extremely rigorous process. It's a process that needs every ounce of early years expertise and the leadership of it. It's a process that is built and co-constructed. It's a process that allows our staff, the more experience they gain is the more agency they have. So they are autonomous in their practice. And it's just a lovely thing to see when you see it in motion. It's an amazing thing to actually observe.
And I was going to ask, in terms of constructing the curriculum, then, just hearing everything that you're saying of like letting go of that control, does that mean that the curriculum has to be quite open and flexible then, and you're not saying this is exactly what we want the children to learn? It's more about this is the skills that we want to allow the children to learn, and then they can go away and learn what they want with those skills.
See, building a curriculum in itself is a really exciting thing as well. So you have to work within the constraints of legislation. So you still have to work with the EYFS. But our way around that, and it's not being around it, it just means that creative pedagogies fit within that legislative field. So we operate with the International Baccalaureate, which helps us to structure our learning around how we structure the terms. So we start off the terms with who we are, first term, and that is a broad scope of the focus for that first term. But then that's around settling the children, getting them,
of course,
us knowing them knowing us, them becoming comfortable in the environment. We are understanding their backgrounds, their communities, all the things we need. How we organize ourselves is the second half term. So after October half term, it's around how we start organizing and structuring and thinking about how learning, you understand the flow of the building, you understand what's happening, and we understand planning and all of the elements of what makes the practice dynamic. Then this term, we're looking at where we are in place and time. And that is around children beginning to have a broader scope of the world and understanding, that there are other people, other places in the world, how they live, what they do, all of this stuff. We go on how we share the planet, how we express ourselves, and how the world works. So those are our, 6 broad themes. So within that, we have... you do have to, this is a thing where people go, well, if it's all creative and you're letting go, where is the rigor within that? Well, there is planning, there's organization. The planning comes from our observation of the children. So there are 2 elements. You have adult initiated work planning, and you have child-initiated planning. So those 2 things work dynamically within the learning environment. We observe children for what their interests are, how they, what their play is saying, and how we can capture that and actually make the things within the curriculum that we want children learn. We can use that as a vehicle for children learning all these things. So when they come in and they're interested in dinosaurs, they're limitless options for what we can teach children when they come in and they're interested in whatever fad has come from TikTok or wherever there is. It's an avenue to take the learning deeper. So all of us as practitioners, we become researchers and we look at what children are doing. So we explore it, we talk, we research it, and then we put it out there because we've come up with something that we can utilize for the children to use. So that concept, that concept of exploring, researching, and inventing just flows all around our environment in various ways. So there is structure, but the structure is not so rigid that it breaks if you try to bend it. It bends and it folds and it works around the children, but it's strong in what's happening. So, and it's, you see that progress in children, and we are capturing that progress in children as well, so that we understand better what we need to reinvest in the environment. Really, does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you kind of talk about, so the adult initiated and the adults researching. So you say the exploring and the researching is part of what the adults do, and also what the children do. Like you said, it's both of them. So when the adult puts forward the kind of adult initiated learning for the children, it's not just about the content, is it? It's about those skills of researching and exploring that you're focusing on. It's not about this is what they're interested in, so we're going to give them lots of facts about this interest. Actually, we're going to use this interest as a vehicle to allow them to learn all these different skills that are very important.
I'll give you an example. So let me go back to dinosaurs then. So we're looking at dinosaurs and we observe the children and we look at what is it that they're really intrigued in. Is it the size? Is it the massive noise or roaring that they think? Some of the children have been interested in the names, diplodocus, whatever, and they have all these names. Some children, as young as you would imagine, have the names of dinosaurs like that. But when we start researching dinosaurs, we start looking at skeletons, we start looking at where they were in history and what they represented. And it is, as much as it is solid knowledge, it is all done to the age and stage of the children, but it is learning, and it's active learning. And I can then go through the EYFS and go tick, 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 tick. Because if it is that it's not a tick box where I'm using the EYFS to teach children. I'm using children's interests to meet what children statutorily, it says that children need to have. So it is really an interesting thing. And when you start looking at skeletons, for example, and how, bones and how they work and how human beings have there is just a limitless amount of learning that children can have. It's also capitalizing on whatever is happening in the world, because children, it is very hard now. I mean, something I'm struggling with is understanding the wars that are happening around the world and assuming that children are too young to know. And I am struggling with the innocence of children and how if our ears are not open and our minds are not open, we create more stress and more trauma by trying to have them live in a false dynamic, which means we're not addressing their anxieties because we believe that we should cover them in fluff. But if children are coming to you with those things, you have to be prepared, or you have to say, well, give me some time to find out and I'll come back, and you make sure that you do go back. So it is a bit, I'm not saying that I don't get challenged, because there are things that do challenge us in our practice, and the fact that we see the innocence of children as something that we have to preserve as long as possible. But we also need to have the creative pedagogy and the understanding and the assessment. But if children are coming to you and children are speaking to you in the many languages that they speak to you in, that you have a duty to harness that, make sense of it, and make sure you're addressing what that child needs. Yeah. So that's it's I'm not ever saying easy, but it is definitely beneficial, and it is awesome practice. I absolutely adore it. Yeah.
Just a very quick and a very exciting announcement from me. The Voice of Early Childhood Conference is back. After the success of our first one, we have organised another one on the 16th of March, 2024. This will be a day full of learning, sparking reflections, sharing, discussing, and networking. Our overarching theme, which fits perfectly with the ethos of the Voice of Early Childhood, is advocacy, agency, and change. So we have Dr. Nathan Archer as one of our speakers, kicking off the conference with his keynote all around advocacy and activism in early childhood, followed by the rest of our brilliant speakers on the day, who are Adam Marriage, who will be discussing leading your team through Ofsted inspections, Dr. Stella Louis, talking about school readiness and intellectual readiness, a question of balance, Ben Kingston Hughes, exploring the power of play, Dr. Valerie Daniel, creative pedagogical practices to encourage agency, Ruth Swales, unpicking how do we construct our own curriculum, Helen Bately, talking about the foundations of early writing, and a special feature from Dr. Sue Allingham, Dr. Sue's Surgery, which you can book into throughout the day. This is an opportunity for a one-to-one Q&A session with Dr. Sue, so really make the most of this special feature by coming prepared with your burning questions, whether this may be around practice, leadership, Ofsted perhaps, or anything else you can think of, you can ask Dr. Sue. We also have a whole conference discussion which is focused on sustainability in early childhood in the widest sense. So we'll be focusing on sustainable development goals, which we will discuss, debate, and really unpick what this means for early childhood and our responsibility as educators within this. Linked to this, there will be a student posters showcase around the Sustainable Development Goals, where we can engage in more discussion and reflections, really focusing on linking theory and academia to practice. So there's lots of in store for you on this really exciting day. And as always, you can expect on our conference day opportunities for shared reflection, discussion, and healthy debate, valuable CPD, a diverse range of speakers, a safe space to share your practice and thoughts, a relaxed atmosphere, plenty of opportunities for networking, a selection of exhibitor stands to explore and ask questions, and of course, fantastic food and refreshments as always. And for 2024, we really had to step it up a notch with a choice of workshops, so a leadership or a practice strand to choose from, a start of the day and an end of the day keynote, interactive sessions, and of course our Q&A with Dr. Sue, which is new. So if this sounds like the kind of conference and early childhood community that you would like to be part of, then grab your tickets before they sell out. We do have limited capacity. And if you haven't already heard, you can get 10% off to use at checkout by signing up to our newsletter. I've added the link in this episode description where you can sign up for your code, find more info about the conference and speakers, and access our Eventbrite page to secure your ticket. So I will see you in March. And it sounds like it is something that a lot of practitioners may want to naturally engage in, this kind of pedagogy where they can exert their own agency and their own knowledge and passion over early childhood and children's learning and have fun in the process of that, and then being learners themselves and researchers. And unfortunately, there are a lot of constraints in terms of, like you say, statutory documents and the way you perhaps interpret them, but also senior leadership maybe not understanding or not being on board with this. Like you say, there are people that may see creative pedagogical practices as airy-fairy, like you mentioned earlier. So I guess for leaders in settings where leaders above them maybe don't really understand this, it's about advocating for early childhood through that knowledge that they have. So like you say, grounded in children's development and perhaps brain development as well.
So the thing is, we have to understand the landscape. The early years landscape is a tricky one. There are elements of it that, for example, me being in a nursery school, I don't need to make a profit of, it is not my living. So there's a whole different tone to what I'm doing. So I understand the need for owners and sometimes managers to make sure, that you have the children in the room. The focus is on generating income because you have to pay your staff. I've been in that position because I've owned my own private nursery. So you understand the importance of generating income because so many people depend on you and your livelihood depends on it as well. So I mean that is a huge dynamic that we have to take in. But when something is your bread and butter, the onus is on you to have the expertise that you need in it and to make sure that you are at the cutting edge of practice, and that it is not just because some people that come into early years, they come into it at the wrong place, in that a lot of people assume that early years is this lower class field that you don't have to be able to acquire very much in education to get into, and it should be an early, you're just there playing with children. That perception of early years is actually very outmoded and very poor. When you're dealing with, if you understand neurolinguistic programming, if you understand brain development and child development, you understand the absolute importance to have your very best in those first 5 years, because of how much is going on in terms of brain development within those first 5 years. And we can actually cull potential by not understanding the importance of those, first 5 years from a position of early years expertise. It is really important that we do not just let children stagnate because we don't have the knowledge and understanding that we should have. I think that's improved a lot over the years. I think a lot more people have, but there is still this downward pressure about children being, are they ready for school? But my upward pressure is is school ready for them?
Yeah.
Is the school ready for them? Because it is not, children are not there. The school is not there to just perform a function in that the child must function the school. The school is supposed to be there for the benefit of the child. So it's all of it is an interesting landscape. The early years is full of dichotomous situations, things that just don't make sense, conflicting things. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's anybody that's in there that doesn't understand the awesome responsibility we have for caring for children and educating them, because it is an awesome responsibility, and it's an honor really to have that responsibility. So my passion really lies in that, but it gets scary to me sometimes because I still feel I have so much to gain from early years. But I'm 64 now, and I'm thinking I'm nearly out the door. I'm hoping that the passion doesn't get beaten out of people because the system focuses on the drudgery and, function rather than on the child in a lot of ways. So it is an interesting time, but it's a time where if you have agency, you have the knowledge, and you are equipped to stand up for what you believe in and to show that what you know is what children need. So you have to have that passion to keep that fire burning in you. And so far, I've still got it. So, yeah, love that.
And I think for educators out there who don't feel that same kind of sense of agency that you do and perhaps your team do, I guess it's about grounding themselves in that knowledge so then they can articulate, what they're talking about, that it is something that is research informed, it has its theoretical basis, and they understand what they're doing, and that to really give them more confidence that they can stand up for their practice.
And it should be that, but I do understand the dynamics of school improvement that focuses more on the value that the school gives. And some people where there is a lot of pressure on education, because education is a hugely political field, and there is a lot of pressure for whatever governments say that education should produce. And a lot of those times, what we're not thinking about is children. We're thinking about results, but we're not thinking about children. And my understanding and what I've seen and observed is that you can have amazing results, but you can still have children who are in nowhere prepared for life. They're nowhere in a place where the knowledge they've gained is applicable. It's because people are focused on knowledge-rich environments, but not environments where children are given the opportunity to apply what they learn. So they may make it into university because they can sit and do an exam, but when they get to university and that kind of learning requires agency, those same children drop out because they have not been taught to have critical thinking. They've not been taught to problem solve. They've not been taught to be independent and have that kind of strength and conviction and confidence in what they know so that they can survive. It's all, well, this, you can do an exam. It doesn't work like that. I know it doesn't work. So I am prepared to speak to anybody, but I understand that life with a leader like me is probably going to be a lot easier than with somebody who has bought into the results dynamic. We need results. So I do get that, but I just keep saying, don't give up, join groups, look into things, keep showing things and show them where it works, and encourage people to speak to the people who are making a success of it and having the results even later on in life.
And I guess it's important, well, the work that I do of sharing these voices, that's the importance of sharing practice. So, hearing your practice, hearing your ideas and how you work in your settings and how your team works, and really sharing that is that kind of inspiration and motivation for other people as well.
Thank you for saying that. That's really nice to hear, because this kind of knowledge and understanding and practice is gained from others inspiring you. So, this isn't because we're amazing. It's because we've sat and we've considered and we've listened and we've learned and we've had the best. When we did have funding, I made sure my staff had the best CPD. They went to Reggio Emilia, they went to Switzerland and Sweden. They had, really good CPD on outdoors learning and all the things we felt were necessary. And we don't have money for that now, but that practice is still strong. We are still invested in having our artists in residence and it's very difficult sometimes to explain that to people that this is not just arty stuff that's going on. This is deep learning, learning that's coming. We have, for example, our clay person who works with us with clay. He does action research with us for children with SEN needs. And how? Because you could have within one of my schools is a lot bigger, and by the end of the school year, you could have 50, 60 children with additional needs within that setting. Yeah. So, and maybe of that 50, 60, maybe 25 of them may end up with the kind of support that they need. So you have a huge amount of children that have needs that meet nobody's thresholds, but you can't just leave them to exist in the environment. So for me, we create action research projects that involve our external partners, and we looked at things like proprioception. We looked at elements of how we work with children with additional needs and how these creative practical pedagogies help them and help them to thrive and survive. We create nurture spaces so when children have great big feelings, they don't have to be overwhelmed by a noisy environment. We can take them somewhere, because it, as much as somebody goes, well, that's a luxury, it's a luxury that is a part of our ethos. We changed a kitchen that we had from a children's centre that was no longer functional as a kitchen because we didn't have that. And we gutted it and created that space because we see it as essential for what children need. Just that to be able to have that breathing space and calm down and feel nurtured and feel supported with their emotions and things like that. But all of that stuff comes from, and I have to, this isn't just, I get to just, oh, Val, you thought of that idea, you can just hair off into it. No, because it has to go through a process. I have to approach my governors with it. It then has to go to the finance committee. Then they start going, well, we don't have money here, but we have this. You can possibly do that. And then it goes to where sometimes the local authority to see if they can match fund it. But you have to have the passion and you have to have the knowledge to go, this is important because, and if I can get it, and my governors are very challenging. My governors are not they're not an easy sell. They don't nod and smile at everything you come with. They want to know why, how is it going to benefit children? How will we know that? So it has to go through all these processes. And especially when you have a deficit budget, but you're still projecting what children need and you're still trying to navigate those circumstances, it's not easy. And I think people think, oh, you are on the school side, so your life is easy. It isn't. It is not at all. But
still navigating so many of the same, and you're still navigating so many of the same challenges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
yeah, well, I was just thinking how it's important to be challenged, like what you just described with your governors, because then you can really dig deep and think, okay, why am I doing this? Or why am I proposing this change? Why is it important? And really exert that agency there and justify through your knowledge and through the research and through the theoretical underpinnings. And that's how you get that experience, by being challenged and being open to it. Sometimes it is really difficult. And of course, it kind of puts you down and you think, gosh, that was really hard. And a lot of people may feel like, I guess, giving up at that point because there's not necessarily a team to support them and say, let's put this proposal together and we can kind of discuss, what we've seen the children, how we've seen the children develop and the impact on them. I think it can be quite difficult when I guess you feel like you're on your own. That's probably the hard part, isn't it?
It can, because leadership is a very lonely place if you don't know how to create a supportive mechanism, a network around you, because it can be a lonely place and a very stressful place. But the blessing that I have is in my the school that I had first when I got my headship role. I've been with those staff for 15 years now. So that dynamic has switched from just, we work together to where we're a work family, and where that really fits with this whole concept of the community and it being a learning community, all of us, their parents, children, staff, and we still have our challenges. We still have You know, people are people. So, you know, sometimes parents can be difficult. Sometimes you have staff who are difficult, and you have to deal with all of those issues because that's just life. But generally, what you're looking at is a group of people who absolutely love what they do. And when things have gotten, when we've had challenges and funding has been so poor, or, you know, we're struggling, I'll have my staff come to me and say, Val, this is not what we signed up for. This is not who we are. So this is what we have going on. How can we make this be the best within the constraints that we have? And that is a blessing when your staff can come to you and say, we've got to do something because this isn't working. I had a member of staff said, come to me. She said, today I found myself shouting, and we don't shout in our school. We try a lot. We try our best. If you hear a raised voice, it's got to be more generally a safeguarding issue or a safety issue, not where people are constantly screeching at you. And when we looked into it, so why was there shouting? Because we're not managing the numbers of children we have now with additional needs and the staffing when it comes to what our budgets can manage. We don't have enough staff on the ground. So we have enough staff as in legislatively we're meeting the requirements. But when it comes to the needs of the children and the amount of staffing that there is, we're having challenges. And I think, I would say a good 20% of what we do is creative thinking around those dynamics, the leadership, and then connecting with the staff, saying, you're the ones that are sitting at the face of this. What is it that you think will work? Then they'll come to you and go, well, Val, we think this, we think that. We go, okay, well, the big picture says this can't work, but can we explore this and see how, you know, this other stuff. So it is that constant interaction and moving around each other and feeling secure in that. I can feel secure to step back and know that my staff will make the right decisions, or they will feel confident making a decision when they need to. And if they have made the wrong decision, we're going to own up to it, and we're going to look into it and, you know, see what we could have done differently. So it is all of those things, you know, letting people be themselves, allowing them to be their creative selves, their imaginative selves, their insecure selves sometimes, because it's all a part of who we are.
Being human.
Being human.
So. I was going to say, it's fantastic having a team who will come and talk to you, and that open dialogue is so vital. But I think I'm hearing that you have created that trust that the team have in you by allowing them to be themselves. And I think, you know, you have to create that environment as a leader, don't you? And that trust, it doesn't just happen.
You do. And it is understanding ourselves as humans. I mean, as a leader, I am never projecting to anyone that I am the know-all and the be-all and end-all of anything, because it then assumes that I'm perfect. So I see myself as an imperfect leader. And I know where the people where I am weak, they are strong. I know where they are. I know who they are. And I know how those dynamics work. So, my Sadia can explain to me 600 times the dynamics of daycare and how the lunch times and the this and that. I can't. She'll tell it to me, and then I'll go, But it works, and it works amazingly because she knows it, and she knows it inside out. It means that I don't have to focus on knowing that. She'll keep me in the loop. She'll let me know why, how, and it's that. But she's strong in knowing how to make that work. So it's a labor of love. That's what it is. An absolute labor of love. It's professional love. It's passionate love for what you do. It's knowing how to love children and love parents, even the ones that we don't like, you know, because we're human beings. It's not everybody that you like, but you have a mandate to professionally love every single child and every single family that you have to deal with. And it means you have to dig deep sometimes, because we don't always see eye to eye, but it is that's the job we have, you know. So yeah,
I think that's probably a nice place to kind of round it all off at. It's been brilliant talking to you. I think it's been such an interesting conversation, from being responsive to children's needs to curriculum to staff leadership and the complexities of the early childhood sector, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, we've covered so many things, and it's such an interesting discussion. I think a lot of people will have lots to reflect on. So thank you so much, Valerie.
Thank you so much for having me, Angelica.